Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be covering the second portion of the Mill PC Microsoft Office shortcut seminar. Today focusing on Microsoft Excel and Microsoft PowerPoint, two of the really common applications you're using across finance or accounting, but again, especially within a concentration for investment banking. So with that, let's jump right into it and start getting into Excel. So I know there's a lot of different commands that we have kind of showing here right now. I know it can be a little overwhelming. So we're going to go piece by piece through this and actually walk you through a live Excel model example to kind of like illustrate a couple of these things here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up for my IBA case from sophomore year, one of the actual financial models we put together in Excel and kind of work through this to illustrate the different formatting, navigation, et cetera, features that we're going to cover for this presentation. So the first thing I kind of want to call out is just like if you were in Google, and we covered this in the last video, but if you're in Google and you want to flip between different tabs in that window, the way you're going to do that is navigating between these different tabs here, i.e. assumptions, income statement, DCF, et cetera, by holding down Control and pressing page down, page up accordingly. If you have PC, you're also going to need to hit the FN key to actually activate the page down, page up. But again, Control, page down, you can see them go rightward, Control, page up to go leftward. And we're just going to stay in this income statement because there's a couple of things that I kind of want to work through on this specific page. So with that, now we've covered kind of navigating just like in Google. What we're going to do is go through a couple of the view functions really quickly for you. So now that we're actually logged into Excel, again, just like Microsoft Word, click Alt, and you have all these different windows that kind of pop up. You can see the W denotes the View tab. So let's flip that real quick, W, and that pulls this. What you're going to notice right away is that there aren't, if you zoom back out a little bit, there aren't any grid lines shown here, right? The grid lines, whenever you pull up Excel, it's kind of the default, shows you kind of what cell you're specifically working in, makes it a little more visually, able to kind of work through. But if you want to look a little cleaner, you can disable grid lines, reactivate them. You can see VG is right by grid lines. So if you go and click VG, you can see the grid lines pop back up just like this. So I'm going to do the same thing to toggle them back off, Alt W, VG, and just like that, they're gone. So that's one of the most common things you'll be doing, or you'll note when you're working in Excel files. Outside of that, while we're on this page for the View tab, one of the other things that you'll notice is the print preview function. So Alt W, and then you can see I, page break preview. Let's do this, I. And then I'm sure you've seen this before, where the gray area kind of indicates where there isn't anything in the cells. Then obviously you can see page 1, page 2, et cetera, kind of indicating what pages or what content would be on different pages if this file were printed off. So the only reason that all these different cells in this area over here are actually still in the printing area is because you have this little highlighted section up here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna unhighlight it. And we're gonna go through the highlighting command in a little bit more in depth later on, but Alt H and then N for no fill. And then you'll notice instantly the print preview automatically goes back to this area again, where there is actual content in it. So that can call your attention to areas where there might be a little bit of information or content that you wanted to omit, delete, but you haven't actually gotten around to it. It can also make the file that you're working in look a little more aesthetically pleasing. That said though, if you don't want to work in this, you don't want to have page 1 kind of in the background, you just want a clean sheet, you can go back to the normal preview. So Alt W and then L, you can see normal in the top left area. So L, Alt W, L, and then it brings you back just like a normal worksheet, no print preview. Again, depending if you want it to look kind of clean, sometimes the formatting might just be preferred like that by whomever you're working for, or deliverables they're wanting to see. That's one of the ways to toggle in and out of the normal and print preview modes. Another thing on the View tab that I want to call out is the zoom function. So Alt W, and then if you go zoom, you see here's Q, and that pops this little window here. You can use the arrow keys to toggle between things, or you can see the custom C is underlined. You click C, you can instantly toggle in and type in whatever zoom you want. So I'm just typing 125 for a custom zoom of 125, and then you can do that accordingly. Again, just one of many ways to zoom in and out. You got obviously there's a zoom bar right here. You can just move your mouse to, or you can just hold down Control and then move with the mouse. Again, Alt W Q is what enables the zoom toggle to pop up. So that being said, we're gonna get a little formatting now. Now we've done a little bit of view functions. So with that, I'm gonna go over on the income statement to any of these random cells here. Let's start out with 2016 historical. for coolers and equipment. Again, this is the IBA case from 2019, fall 2019, so a little bit outdated. But with that, let's change a couple of the main things we've done in Word. Color of the cells, or the text in the cells, the size of the font type, font format, a couple other things like that. So let's say we don't want this to be blue, we want the text to be actually black. We can go to Alt-H and then FC, font color. Again, I'm going through this quickly because we've already visited this. Click in, selected black, and you can see again, this was blue before, just like these other ones, but again, we set it to black right now, Alt-H, FC, font color. In the same way, let's say we want to change the font, you can see it's set to Garamond right now. Maybe we want everything to be in Cambria. Alt-H, FF, font format, and you can type in, say, Cambria, for example, is what you want. And you can see the font changed to Cambria from Garamond. In the same way, then you can see it's size 11 font, so Alt-H, FS, font size, FS, Alt-H, FS. Once we want this to be a little bit smaller to match what the rest of the stuff is there, 10. And then just change from font size of 11 to font size of 10. So again, changing the font format or font type, Alt-H, FF, change the font size, Alt-H, FS, font size, and then font color, FC, font color, Alt-H, FC. One of the things I'd like to call out right now, and you're probably going to run into this at some point, but whenever you're hard coding financial data, again, if you go to the right here, you can see that in the formula builder, you have a function, whereas over here in the historical figures, you have just plain numbers. In finance, people tend to denote historical hard-coded data, hard-coded data more broadly, with a really kind of staunch blue like this. So to get to that specific color, if it's not readily available, oftentimes in your work computer, it'll kind of be readily available, but Alt-H, FC. And if you go down to M for more colors, you see in the bottom of that ribbon, M, scroll over to custom. And then what you're going to do is just using the tab button to move down to blue, or just clicking into the little cell right there. You're going to change that to 255. Leave the others at 0, red and green respectively at 0, blue set to 255. And you can click enter. And just like that, again, you can see the color you have right here. Again, 00255, that's the hue for the blue that you use in finance to, again, denote hard-coded colors. Just wanted to spend a little time to cover that. Outside of that, again, you'll notice a couple of these figures are bolded, italicized, underlined, etc. Probably have familiarity with this already, but Control B, bold it, unbold it. Control U, underline. Control U, underline. Control I, italicize. Control I again to unitalicize. Let's say we want to fill this cell. Again, I know over for this portion over here, these couple cells over here, I unhighlighted them, but if you want to highlight a specific cell from a specific color, Alt-H, you can see the little fill button right there, Alt-H, and you can toggle into whatever you want. For the purposes of making it kind of stand out, I'm just going to set it to kind of bright yellow, orangish hue. And just like that, again, Alt-H, setting it to yellow, you can see that this cell is filled in with a yellow kind of highlight, right? Outside of that, I'm going to use the actual text itself, not just numbers to show this, but again, just like within Microsoft Word, if you want to adjust the orientation, the layout of where the text is applied, in this case, you can see that it's aligned left. Let's say you want revenue to be aligned center, Alt-H, and then AC, see up here, align center, AC. You can see it's aligned center. If you want to align it right, Alt-H-AR, it's aligned right of the cell. And then if you want to put it back to normal, Alt-H-AL, and then you can see it's back aligned to the left. Outside of that though, and align a couple cells, maybe you also want to merge a couple cells. For example, up here, you can see that all these different rows or columns rather are highlighted. So G6 through L6, all these cells are merged together. What you can do right here is, unmerge them really quickly. If you want all these to be merged together, what you're going to do is Alt-H, and you can see M for merge, Alt-H-M. And then if you want to merge them, boom, you can see it's merged like that. Sometimes it'll be aligned center, so I might be set to center. If you want to guarantee that it'll be set to center, Alt-H-M, and then C, merge and center. If you just do merge and it's not automatically set to align center, you can expect the text to probably just be aligned to the left. So again, that's the only distinction between the two for merging cells, but again, something else that I wanted to cover. Something else I think is pretty important to know is in relation to borders. So in the case of this, the header portion up here, you can kind of see it separates a couple of key items, i.e. historical, expected, kind of current period, and then projected financial periods. And those you can see are directly separated by borders, or you can use borders in the way of kind of separating financial statement lines. So in this case, all the different aspects that feed into the overarching total revenue column are separated by total revenue, and then the different portions that kind of flow into revenue. The way in which you'd actually build out a border is, I'm just gonna do it in this line up here. Again, you can see there's no border right now. Once I've selected the area that I want to apply a border to, Alt-H-B for border, you can see it just up here, Alt-H-B. And then using any of these keys here, you can apply a border to the entire selection that you've chosen. So in this case, let's say I want a bottom border, O. And then if you kind of scroll away, you can see you've applied a bottom border here. To get rid of the border, select whatever area you want. If I wanted to get rid of both drinkware and then total revenue, I can select multiple cells and then Alt-H-B again. And then if you want no border, you can see N listed right there, N. And just like that, the borders are both gone, right? A couple different types of borders I'm gonna call out right now. And again, this will be included in the slide deck reference as well. But again, Alt-H-B-O can bring you the bottom border. In the same way, let's say you want to be in this cell right here, you want to apply top border, Alt-H-B, and then you can see P for top border, P. You can see again, I was in this selection right here. So naturally, the P was, the top for up here. In the same way, if you want to apply it to the entire area out here, you want to kind of, draw attention to the total revenue row, Alt-H-B, and then S. You can see outside borders, S. And just like that, you have a border around the entire selection that you have right here. Those are a couple of the few different types of border options that you have available to you. Again, I'm just calling out a few of them for you. But again, the border function, Alt-H-B, and then toggling between different cells to actually, or keys rather, to actually select whatever type of border you want to apply. Now we've covered a couple of the borders, some of the merging, some of the cell formatting, and the viewing. I think also understanding how to work through different cells, either auto-fitting them height, width-wise, or inserting, deleting rows, columns, etc. I think it's something else that's pretty important to do. So with that, what I'm going to do is scroll over to the far right here, or let's start at the far left. And I'm going to adjust the width of this column. It seems pretty thin, right, for an elevator column. So for that, what I'm going to do is Alt-H, and then since we're formatting the width of the cell, you can see over here, Format, O. So format. And then again, you can see there's stuff related to sheets, there's stuff related to cells. And in this case, what we're doing again is we want to make it a little bit wider of a cell. So we're going to adjust the column width, W, W. And then it pops this little window right here. So once you've done Alt-H-O for the format window, you click W, you'll be able to manually adjust the width of a cell, or rather the column that you're working in. Let's say we want to set it to 3, make it a little bit wider. It's 1 right now, so 3, and then enter. And then again, just by doing Alt-H-O-W, and then typing in 3, clicking enter to actually run it, make it work, you can see that it shifted from size 1 to size 3. If you want to make it really big, Alt-H-O-W and then 10. You can see it's a lot wider of a cell. It's probably what a normal cell width would kind of be like, it's around 10. In the same way, let's say, let's set this back to 3 quickly. In the same way, you can see right now, coolers and equipment, that doesn't need to be that long of a cell. So what I'm going to do is Alt-H-O, and if you click I, it'll auto fit the column width to that cell. So in this case, you'll notice it'll go pretty much flush with the T in equipment. So Alt-H-O-I, and you can see it goes like that. So it fits the content of that specific cell. That said, though, you'll notice if you scroll down to this line, row 18, click F2 to toggle in to actually see what's in the contents of the cell. We're going to cover that a little bit later, but click F2, you'll see that the line is actually really long, and having manually or auto adjusted rather the width of the column based on cell B9, that wasn't, really the best interest of making everything appear correct. So what you want to do instead is you want to do Control plus, and that will auto select the entire column that you're in. Once you select the entire column, then you can do the auto width format, Alt-H-O-I. And now you can see it's best fit to all different content in this column. So in this case, you can see cell B18 was the longest one. And naturally, again, once you do that auto adjust, having taken into account not just coolers and equipment, but control spacebar to actually select the entire column. Now you can do Alt-HOI and it will fit every content within that specific column, right? You can adjust the column height as well, and this can come into play if you're really putting a lot of information, it's really dense, into a specific Excel column or Excel cell rather. But for that, it would be Alt-HO and then H for height, same way as Alt-HOW, but for manually adjusting the height, you can adjust it accordingly, or Alt-HO, and then you can see A is auto fit row height. Won't really do much there because it's already set to where it should be, but Alt-HOA will again auto adjust the height of the cell. Now it's kind of covered a little bit of the formatting of it. Let's say we want to insert a column. We've done some of the adjustments of the columns and the cells. We want to actually insert a new column. And to do that, you can do Alt-H and then insert I up here, Alt-H-I. And then again, we want to insert a column, so C. And just like that, again, now you see it's not just this right here, but you also have a second column as well. If you want to select two cells or two columns in the same way, Alt-H-I-C, and you can see that now you have not just two columns, and you haven't just added one column, but you've rather added two because you've had two cells selected or two columns selected. Let's say you don't want as many columns as you have right here. So in the same way, you can kind of just select these. And then for delete, just by insert up here, Alt-H, and then D for delete, D. You can see that we've selected columns A and B right now. Let's say you want to delete these columns, C, Alt-H, D, C. And the two columns that we had previously selected, you can see are gone, leaving just A and B, which were previously C and D. I know it's probably a little confusing the way I rattled that off, but hopefully that's still tracking. Outside of just the columns themselves, you can also insert rows. So let's say there was a fourth kind of subcategory of different revenue drivers. You want to insert another one that you didn't previously account for. So Alt-H-I for inserting, and then a row, R. And then you can put something else here. So let's say miscellaneous, because I don't have anything top of my mind. Once you do that, you can see there's still a little highlight right here. Sometimes there's some residual formatting. That's something you'll always kind of navigate and have to work around. But just like before, Alt-H-H, and then no, N for no fill, you kind of see the bottom, so N. And again, that's just to illustrate the fact that you have the ability to insert rows, insert columns, Alt-H-I-C for columns, Alt-H-I-R for rows. And depending on how many rows, columns that you select respectively, that will influence the number of rows, columns, et cetera, that you insert as well. So if you select two cells, or two columns rather, and you do Alt-H-I-C, you'll insert two columns. If you insert, three rows, or you select three rows, it'll insert three rows. But again, just wanted to kind of showcase a couple of those things right there. One of the other kind of key components that you'll find is oftentimes when you're formatting files, potentially for virtual data room upload, is you're going to want to have consistency across the different tabs or different sheets within the workbook rather. So let's say, for example, I know for this file, you can see the top three rows are all highlighted in kind of a navy hue. Maybe you want, cells B1 through 3 across all the different sheets in the workbook to be a yellow highlight. Again, I know it's not going to look pretty, but for the purposes of illustrating this, we're going to do that. Instead of having to go to each sheet and applying the same type of formatting, you can automatically adjust by linking different worksheets in one swift move. So the way in which you do that is, I'll go back to the income statement here. So this one, you can see I'm in, I'll delete this column right now so we have consistency. So I'm going to select these three cells. These are the three that I'm going to want to highlight. So I'm going to press down Control Shift and page down. Again, for a PC, you're going to also need the FN key, but Control Shift page down. And you can see that as I'm continually going to the right, they're highlighted. So I'm just going to select a couple more of these. So now that I've done this, I can just move around the tab and you can see that they're still kind of highlighted all down here. So I'm going to highlight these cells right here in this worksheet, apply a highlight for the fill for that specific range of cells. So that's yellow. I'm just going to navigate to the right, automatically gets out of the linking of all the different worksheets. And now, again, you can see in this one, because I didn't select anything, it's still the same. But if you scroll to the left, you'll notice that all the sheets that I had selected previously have all had the adjustments that I did in that one sheet. Again, that was linking it with Control Shift page down, page up. Doesn't just have to be rightwards, you can also do it leftwards. But again, once you link the sheets, any edits you do, noticing again that you have kind of lit up sheets down here, all those edits will be applied, not just in that individual sheet if they're linked, but all the sheets that are linked. And specifically for the range of cells. And that could be highlighting the cells, certain colors, that can be making them bold, that can make them a certain font. You know, making column M in every single cell a certain width. Just know that if you link the sheets like that, sometimes you can mess it up if you don't have consistency in formatting across all different sheets. But again, that can actually be something that saves you quite a bit of time if you have to make adjustments across multiple different sheets. So now I've kind of covered that. There's a few other items that I'd like to work through outside of, again, just applying some of these things across multiple sheets. It is hiding rows and hiding columns. So let's say you wanted to print this little income statement projection, put it into a model, but you don't really want to include the historical financials. You rely on them for actually building up formulas, but you don't want the final deliverable to have them in the actual appearance, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to select, in this case, I want to hide these columns here, column C through E. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Shift, Alt, and then right arrow key. So Shift, Alt, right arrow key, and that enables you to group either rows you can see right now, or in this case, columns. So I select columns, click OK. And you'll see this little minus and click plus sign pop up. So just like that, you can see I've hidden all of the columns that I had selected before. So in this case, it was just historicals. So you can just toggle in and out like that, bring them up. All the content's still there. Again, you can see it goes B to F because C through F or C through E are still there, and they're just hidden, taken out of just normal view. Again, that's Shift, Alt, and then right arrow key to give you the window to group whatever cells you have pulled up right here. If you wanted to hide these different rows, Shift, Alt, rows, and just like that, you can hide those rows and just leave the overarching total revenue box. Again, I know this looks a little bit wonky, but this is mainly just for the purposes of illustrating everything. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you're able to track that. While we're kind of using the Shift key, one of the other things that you might find or you might think is important in whatever you're working through is adding comments to cell, annotating cells. So in this case, maybe you want to add something like, all right, well, how is this being driven from? Like, where is this coming from? So you can see right now when you audit the cell by clicking F2, again, F2 enables you to go into the cell, or once you're in the cell, you click F2 again, and then you're able to kind of move through and then select different cells to reference into your formula that you're building. But if you want to actually comment on a cell, it'll be Shift F2, and you can see how it pops this little bar right here. You can type anything in. Maybe it's reference growth assumptions. Click Escape to toggle out, and you'll notice there's a little red kind of triangle in the top right corner of the cell right here. So if you click Shift F2 again, you can toggle in and you can see what was listed there before. Can help someone who's kind of trying to go through the model understand how it's structured a little bit better. Or maybe if it's an internal document, maybe there's a little question. Maybe someone said, hey, we actually want to circle back and really see if this is a number that we feel confident in for our projections. And that, if you're doing diligence, you're uploading files to virtual data room. Maybe if a buyer is looking at these financials and they see, we want to circle back and make sure these numbers are solid, maybe that could add a little bit of confusion, ambiguity into the process and make the buyer kind of hesitant to believe a lot of what you're putting forth outside of that file alone. So for that reason, you want to, again, for the purposes of virtual data room, upload file sharing for the diligence process. You want to remove all comments. So now we've inserted a comment. Again, I know I'm kind of moving back and forth between a bunch of different stuff, doing things and undoing them. To get rid of a comment, what you're going to want to do is Alt-H, and you can see up here a little eraser icon, E, and then clear comments and notes, M, So Alt-H-E-M, and you can see that the comment, the little red triangle is gone. Click Shift F2, nothing's there because you deleted the comment. Shift F2 again, nothing's there. Again, Alt-H-E-M. So Shift F2 to create a comment or get into a comment to access it, type stuff in, review whatever comment was there existing, and then Alt-H-E-M to delete the comment. If you want to be sure that you delete comments across the entire page, you can just do Control-A, Control-A. So 2 Control-A's, so Control-A, double click the A, don't double click the Control. If you're in a setup like this and you just do Control-A once, you notice it kind of selects just item alone, but if you do Control-A, it selects the entire sheet. Sometimes you'll need that depending on the structure of the worksheet. But once you selected everything, you can do Alt-H-E and then M, and then that's just a foolproof way of making sure that all comments that could potentially add ambiguity or you just want to get rid of are all gone. And again, that's mostly pertinent for adjusting files, preparing them for the virtual data room portion for the diligence process in a M&A process, but again, something else to just have in the back pocket, even if that's not necessarily applicable to you. Let's see here. So with that, I think what we're going to do is we're shift into some actual number adjustments. Now I've covered a lot of just the normal cell formatting and cell navigation stuff. And the way we're going to do that is just shifting down to the total revenue line. So I'm going to get rid of this here, set the structure kind of like it was before. So cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bold this, make this a highlighted cell, just to kind of call a few things into point here. So let's say right now you want to copy and paste something, or you want to adjust the number format. We'll get to the pasting in a little bit. Sorry for the moving around there. Let's say you want to adjust some of the number formatting here. Again, right now you can see it's set to currency, but maybe you want to change it up a little bit. So in order to do that, one way you can do that is Alt-H-N. And then if you kind of use the down arrow key, you can see a different menu of potential number formats to set it to. Set the number, for example, you can see changes from the dollar sign out in front with the comma to being this number like this. And once you set something like that, or even if it's set to currency, Alt-H-N and then Alt-C for currency, sometimes it'll have 2 decimal points. And depending on the size of numbers you're working with, you might not really want those there. So a quick way to get rid of some of those decimal points, again, navigating around the setup of different numbers, is Alt-H. And then if you want to reduce it, you can see up here, the arrow keys around here for different decimals. You'll do Alt-H9 to reduce decimals, Alt-H9, Alt-H9, and just like that, you can see it goes back to 1926. Or if you want to add decimals, Alt-H0, Alt-H0. So again, Alt-H9 to delete and Alt-H0 to add. Those are a couple of things that you'll be using pretty consistently, so I recommend getting familiar with Alt-H0 and Alt-H9. Or if you want to turn something into a percentage rather, Alt-HP. You can see it changes into percentage from the number format that it was in or the currency format that it was in. I know I'm doing this pretty quickly, but those are a couple of the means of which that you can actually change the setup of different text or different numbers within Excel. So set it back to currency, Alt-H-N, and I'll do the 9 right there to change back to 0 decimals. Now I kind of covered that, I'll briefly show the Control-1 menu. So Control-1, this up is what pops up. This is going to be a more comprehensive way of adjusting cell content. So this will have stuff related to numbers is what its default will pull to. But again, you can see the little dotted lines here. You can see I'm navigating around these items up here, not in this or in this or in this window. So just using the arrow keys, I'll navigate around here and kind of show some of the other areas that are able to be worked through. Personally, I wouldn't change the font type or the border or the fill or anything like that within this window, this ribbon. But rather I just use the number kind of aspect in the format cells, Control-1 window that pops up. And again, let's say you want to change this from currency like it's in right now to something else. What you can do is using tab. You can see now I'm shifted down to the category, or tab over to this, tab, just kind of navigate around. Might want to go down to custom. This is probably where you're going to be using Control-1 the most. So again, Control-1 and then tab over here. A variety of different types you can input here. I think one of the types of custom number formatting that I'd like to call out for awareness has to do with multiples. I mean, I think it's easy enough to find currency or percentages or number formats, stuff like that over here. I think it's pretty explicit, but let's say you want to make something a multiple. Let's say 1926 was a multiple instead of just $1,926,000, for example. So in the type cell right here, type in 0.0x, then move down to OK, click enter. You can see just like that, that's how you could manually adjust the formatting of a cell to instead be a currency or percentage to actually be a multiple. Again, that's going to Control-1, custom, and then using tab, you can see I'm using the type right now. I can manually adjust the setup. You type in 0.0x, enter, and then again, it'll make it a multiple. So there's a variety of different things that could have covered there, but again, multiples I think are pretty pertinent for most people in finance. So that's one of the issues I always struggle with is finding the multiple format, and if it's not there, that's one of the ways you can just quickly do that. Now we've kind of covered some of the number formatting. We are going to get to the pay special, something that I briefly alluded to a little bit earlier. Whenever you have a cell like this, you Control-C, you copy it, and Control-V, you paste it. If you click F2, you'll see that this is a function summing all the cells right above it, whereas this is still summing all of them. It's not 1925 that you're copying and pasting over here. It's the function that covers the same type of range, the 3 cells directly above it. It's adding together, or the 4 cells rather, that it's adding together. So if you want to paste something without the bolded and the border at the top and the highlight, there are a variety of different options you have available to you. And they're all available through the Alt-ES window. So once you've copied something, let's say you want to apply everything except the borders alone. So you'll do Alt-ES, and the paste special menu will pop up. If there's one thing out of this presentation that I think should be retained, I really truly believe that it's paste special function, Alt-ES, and then you have a variety of different things you can kind of see down here. We'll go through a couple of them. But again, let's say in this case, I want to paste everything except the borders. You can see X is underlined. So X, I'll click X. And you can see it automatically moves over here. So click enter. You can see that the function is still the same. You still have the highlight, you still have the bold, it's still Garamond, size 11, all of that still copied over. The only thing that's different from that paste special is you don't have that top border like you have over here, right? So I'm gonna Control-Z, undo that, still copied, I'm gonna do Alt-ES. And this time, I just wanna paste the value. So V, paste the value. And then over here, if you F2, you can see again, it's just referencing this cell, whereas over here, it's just showing 1925.78, on and on and on. So again, Control-C, Alt-ES, V will just paste the values that you have listed there. It'll get rid of the formulas. This can be helpful in a variety of different situations, more you probably realize right now. But Alt-ESV is exceptionally important. Outside of that, I think the Alt-EST function is also really important. You can see right now we have the number listed right there, but maybe we do want the formatting to be pretty consistent. And this can be for highlighted cells, this can be for cells with borders, this can be for cells that are set up with a specific type of font type, font size, font color, etc. Once we have the selection copied, Alt-ES, and then T for format, T you can see is underlined, and then click enter. And just like that, again, you can see it's still referencing, this is referencing a function, whereas this is just an individual number since we just pasted the value. But we've copied and pasted the formula to be consistent, or the formatting rather to be consistent. So you can see this is multiple right here. This is the multiple right here, bolded, size 11 Garamond, highlighted with this kind of faint blue. So again, Alt-H or Alt-EST, Alt-EST will apply the format. I think the last thing for paste special that I think is really pertinent is the F function. So I'm going to delete a couple of these things over here. Once I do that, again, you can see everything that flows down here is relying upon what's up here. And as such, everything else kind of gets deleted out. So because this is a pretty consistent format, you can see it's just summing up all the different cells in these, four rows above hand. What you can do is twofold. You can either Alt-P or Alt+sign rather, and that will automatically sum up the stuff directly above it, sometimes to the left or sometimes to the right of it, depending on the structure and setup of whatever file you're working in. Or you can do Control-C, select whatever cells you want to apply the same formula in, and using Alt-ES for F formula, Alt-ES-F, enter. Just like that, you can see the same formula applied over here, again, referencing all the 4 cells in the rows directly above it. So again, it's Alt-ES-F to apply the formula directly above or in whatever cells that you're trying to apply the same formula with. Oftentimes, if you're working in a really large Excel file, doing that and applying the same function once you've actually created one specific column that functions, that can be one way to save a lot of time so you're not just manually adjusting each individual line. So again, revisiting the paste special functions real quickly, it's Alt-ES-V for just the value, Alt-ES-T for the format, Alt-ES-F for bringing the formula over, and then Alt-ES-X for applying same format, same everything, except for having borders attached to it. I find myself doing the Alt-ES-F, Alt-ES-T, Alt-ES-V pretty frequently. Alt-ES-X, not as much. But again, that's just me. So now we covered pretty much everything that I think I wanted to cover within the Excel file. The last couple of things we're going to do are more kind of custodial type items. So oftentimes, if you're uploading a file in the virtual data room, you'll want a quick pass at the file to make sure there's not any outstanding items you might have missed. And for that, you use File Inspector. So Alt-F-I-I, then inspect the document. Do you want to save your file now? No. And when you do Alt-F-I-I, and this will be one of the last things you'll do before uploading a file to the virtual data room for diligence process, or just sharing a file, making sure there's any information contained that shouldn't be in there. Alt-F-I-I will scan for all these different things. You know, in the case of comments, for example, or the author of the file, maybe it's an employee. You don't want to share the name of the employee because it's not a principal or officer that's been disclosed to the buyer, and any marketing materials that have been shared. You can potentially remove some of these things, so it's you know, more accessible, and it's not going to reveal anything that's proprietary with the buyer. So again, Alt-F-I-I, you'll get reps with it most likely if you're doing virtual data room prep this summer. But again, Alt-F-I-I is for document inspector. It helps you remove a couple items that might create some contingencies or some liabilities for the process. And now I've covered that. I think the main last item that I would like to actually cover would be football fields. So in the document, you can kind of see this is the football field we put together. It's a quick visualization, mostly for compiling different valuation methodologies. So I'm going to Control A. I know that the text is kind of colored white there to blend in, make it not really visible. So I'm going to make it visible again. What this does right here, the football field, is it's a double horizontal bar chart. So what you'll notice if you click into it is you'll see that the starting point for all these, you see the axis starts at 2,500. The starting point for all these is actually the end of all these different bar charts over here. So in this case, maybe if you, once you calculate all your different valuation methodologies, maybe the starting point for these would be all the minimum balances here in case precedence for some reason it was exceptionally low for the minimum range. Maybe the third quartile of whatever selection we pull together is actually what we feel is representative for the M&A comps. But outside of that, again, getting back to the point of how to create a football field, again, I know this is something a lot of people like to put together. The football field is, again, using blank highlighted cells or cells that are set their shape fill to 0 or clear rather. And then the difference between whatever your upper limit for your implied ranges across these different valuation methodologies, in this case, the difference as it's noted up here, that's what's actually going to be the different bars that actually illustrate the different ranges across the valuation methodologies. So I think that's pretty much what covers the main content for Excel. Hopefully this is pretty helpful. And with that, what we're going to do is we're just going to jump right into PowerPoint. This is a long video, but let's just get right into PowerPoint. So if I want to close this window out, and this is applicable across everything PC related, it's not just exclusive to Excel, but if you want to close out of this, Alt F4, and then don't save in this case. Alt F4 will close out any sheet that you're working in. or any file that you're working in rather. So in this case, let's say we're going through PowerPoint. A couple of things that I want to actually work out here, and I have a couple of slides already prepped up and ready to kind of show what a final product might look like. But when we're working in PowerPoint, a lot of it's going to be related to aligning logos or moving shapes, adjusting the format of shapes, mostly aesthetic stuff, or copying and pasting different information in to create marketing materials, internally used documents, etc. So with that, I'm going to focus mostly on shape alignment, shape movements, and then also creating a table where you can actually input some of the data to be used for something. So with that, let's jump right into it. So the first thing, if you want to open a new slide, you want to add it in. So Alt-H-I, escape out of there, Alt-H-I, and we're just going to add in a blank slide. So again, Alt-H-I if you want to add a new slide. In this case, I just want to add in a couple different boxes. I'm going to use those as really just illustrating how to align different logos together. Let's do Alt-N for insert, N, and then S-H. You can see shapes kind of towards the middle. S-H, and let's scroll over to a couple of these boxes. So right now, after I've done Alt-N-S-H, you can see I've inserted a box, moved it over here. I could repeat the process if I wanted to, but I'm just going to say for the ease of purposes, I'm just going to duplicate this. So Control-D, and I'm going to make this into 3 boxes here. So now I have 3 boxes. Again, Control-D. You can do it with slides too. I selected the slide and press Control-D, duplicate the slide. I'm going to undo that really quickly. But if you want to work through multiple different objects, make them all consistent, holding down Control and using your mouse to select multiple items. You can use Alt-JD in the top right, you see, Alt-JD, SF for shape fill. Maybe you want a black outline, or a black fill rather. Do that to make it a little bit easier to see. And then maybe you want a kind of wonky colored outline. So again, Alt-JD, now that I have all these objects selected, so shape format, Alt-JD, shape outline, SO, shape outline. And then I'll make this kind of a yellow color to make it stand out a little bit, right? Maybe to make it stand out a little more, you can do Alt-JD, SO, and then for weight to make it pop more, W. And let's move it down to, I don't know, 2¼ points. So now we have that. You can see we're working through a bunch of different boxes here. Not really much point to them. But again, what we're going to do is, let's assume these are logos. We want to align them to make it kind of pretty, appealing to look at. So let's say we want all these different boxes to be perfectly aligned at the top. I have this, I pulled this from online, source from Pinterest. It's just a compilation of different logos. You can see they're aligned perfectly in the center, across, perfectly aligned columns, rows, all aligned across the center, top, etc. It looks crisp, right? So even though we only have 3 items here, let's try to replicate that a little bit, right? So again, holding down Control and then clicking on to multiple different items, or let's say we don't want to click this one, you can unclick it. But again, we're working through all of them, so we can click it back. We're going to do Alt-JD, and again, we want to align these to the top. So AA, and then T for top. So again, Alt-JD, AA, T brings them all to the top. Right now, again, you can see they're not spaced like these are. We want them to be spaced evenly. So I'm going to select these again, Alt-JD, AA. And in this case, we want them to be horizontally distributed. So H, distribute horizontally. And boom, just like that, you can see they're aligned at the top. They're all the same size. So in this case, you don't have to worry about that. And they're all distributed horizontally. Let's say this is exactly how we want it. We can select all of them again. And let's say in this case, we want to group them because we're content with how they're structured. In this case, Alt-JD, A-G for group, G again. And now you can see that all of them are grouped together. So if you use the arrow key, they'll all move the same way, they'll stretch the same way, they'll go upside down, compress, etc., however you want them to be. If you want to click into one, again, to select a specific item, you can click into a specific item. So go ahead and clicking into, so you want the center one, click into that, and you can see I'm specifically editing this cell. So again, Alt-JD, SO, red. And now you have the 2 ones on the outside that are yellow and the one in the middle is red. Again, just to illustrate how you can work through group cells or grouped objects rather. In a similar way, let's say you want to ungroup them, Alt-JD, AG again for grouping, and then U for ungrouping. And then as clicking under them, they're not all grouped together again. So not all the changes are automatically going to apply to each of the individual objects. In the presentation, there's a variety of different ways you can distribute things. So maybe if you want not just a horizontally distributed set of objects, maybe you have these three right here. Alt JD AA. Let's align these to the right. So now they're all aligned to the most rightward item. In this case here, you'll notice the shape doesn't move. I just undid that, so that's why it's just a quick motion there. But again, I'll Alt JD AA and then R for right. All of them move aligned right. So again, just like we did for distributing them equally horizontal, maybe you want to distribute them equally vertically. So Alt JD AA V for vertically, V. And just like that, you have all the objects that you had selected grouped together. You want to make sure that you're not selecting items unintentionally. If there's a table, for example, and you happen to select that, and then your objects aren't aligning the way you expect them to, it's probably because you selected the entire table. So just be cognizant of that if you're ever aligning multiple different items. And again, it's just a matter of holding down Control, clicking or unclicking objects to select and unselect them respectively. Now we've kind of covered that. Let's move down to kind of what a buyer profile might look like using tables. So again, I kind of use this example here from Pinterest to show what what companies might be looking for in aligning different logos to make a presentation again look more appealing to whomever the materials are being used for. But in the same way, you might put together tables. Oftentimes, you'll have templates already provided to you from the bank, but you'll put together tables to either list out potential buyers. You've probably done this in your IBA cases in the past, your other case competitions, kind of somewhat structured like this. This came from mergers and acquisitions. I'm assuming from Barclays Capital is where M&I sourced it from. Or you might actually put together something like this. These are just a couple principal members from KKR, major private equity alternative investment firm. So in order to do that, you might fill out a table. Even if you can't really readily see it, you can see there's still some lines right there. So this is a table you can work through. So what we're just going to do is create something like this very, very quickly to show how you might build a table for a buyer profile or for a company potential acquirer setup. So with that, what I'm going to do is again Alt-H-I, insert the tab, blank. And to insert a table that you might want to work through, it'll be Alt-N for insert, and then on the top left you can see T, table. And in this case, let's just make it a 2x3. For the buyer profile that I really quickly put together over here, this is what it might look something like. Before you have a management team meeting with the team of people who are interested in learning more about the company for a fireside chat or a management presentation, you might put something like this together, usually in descending order of seniority to least seniority. This, again, this arbitrary, I just pulled it from the KKR website, a couple people I saw right away. But once you have the table, again, Alt-N-T to build it, you can also adjust the setup of the table. So Alt, and then I'll click J. You can see table design is JT, table layout is JL. Let's click JT really quickly. And then over here, let's go A to adjust it, and then C to make it a clear table. So again, Alt JT A C. And if you escape out, you can see it's just a normal looking table, nothing special to it. But that's where you start to adjust the layout of it with Alt JL. So in this case, you see there's a variety of different things you can use. I'm not going to go through each of them. You can reference some of the slide materials as well for this. But if you want to insert a column or insert a row rather, you can insert a row. If you want to insert a column, you can do so accordingly. If you want to delete a row or a column, you can do that. You can also adjust the height of different cells that make up the table. So in this case, H or the H function. So make it 1.5. And just like that, you can see that specific cell or the specific row rather is now 1.5 inches. Let's say we want to apply it to the entire thing or to the entire table. Alt JL H 1.5. Now I selected the entire table. You can see everything now is 1.5 instead of just the individual cell we were working in before. Let's say we want to type in a name. So let's say Dean Brown, for example. Dean Brown. For the purposes of keeping consistent with something like this, let's say a sheet right now, you can see is his name's listed down in the bottom portion and his picture is listed towards the top. for his respective column. Maybe we want to put Dean Brown in a similar way, copy and paste this picture in, and have Dean Brown listed towards the bottom of the cell. So the way in which you go about that would be selecting whatever it is you want, or just selecting, the entire cell in the table, Alt-JL. And then you can see over here, you can either align it center, align left, align right, pretty consistent across other Microsoft platforms we've covered so far. Or just like for some of the aligning functions that we just covered, if you click B, it'll bring stuff to the bottom. So in this case, let's highlight this. Alt-JL C brings to the center of that. Alt-JL O brings to the top. Alt-JL B brings to the bottom. If you want to adjust this, again, once you have all the information, the background or material information for each of these respective buyers, then you could plug in, copy and paste from an online website into here, and then share that over with whomever your client is, in advance of the meeting. Again, we're not going to go through this. I'm just going to leave this example right here of what a buyer profile might look like, something you share again with the client if you're on the sell side in advance of a meeting with these different parties here. And again, following the process, we kind of generally outlined here, structuring it, however is best suited to whatever bank you're working for, whatever company you're working with. That's kind of how you toggle around with a table within PowerPoint. But hopefully seeing a couple of these things here, and mostly this right here in relation to aligning and grouping different objects was helpful. I think the final point that I would like to speak to before kind of logging off would be understanding that sometimes your own bank or your own company will have macros built in. So for example, this summer, instead of, if I click Alt, you can see all these different little ribbons pop up here. There was a function pressing a certain key that would open up the company's own macros, or macros that were provided through a third party rather. So your bank might have, for example, let's say P is a hot function. So let's say you want to line these here. It might be Alt P, and then 1 or 0 could align them center, could align them left. Depends whatever your bank or company offers. But just recognize that it's not just exclusively selecting these different items and then Alt JD, AA all the time. It might just be a matter of Alt P1 or something that your company again has set up. You'll learn that once you hit the desk. But again, I wanted to kind of set out how you go about aligning different stuff without those extra macros built in, just something that you'd automatically have on your computer. Hopefully all this is helpful. I know this is again a pretty long and pretty content heavy session that tended to jump around quite a bit. But hopefully this is helpful, gave you better insight on some things you might expect to do, a couple common commands across both Excel as well as PowerPoint, and hopefully makes you a more efficient Excel and PowerPoint user. So with that, thanks again for everything, and enjoy the rest of your day.